So we got another one. I hope you guys are enjoying the new set. Apparently when you have the light coming in and reflecting off your face and into the camera, it looks a lot better. And this is, it's a cool little wicker thing. Those are in style, kind of hides the overall dumpiness of this shithole of a house I live in. But anyway, we're here to talk about young entrepreneurs. This one is a young lady. I don't know what country she's from or where it happened, but basically she's like 19 and made a bunch of money online with this really niche kind of company that helps Chinese people give their children Western names. I don't know if you knew this or not, but the Great Firewall of China is so intense that, according to the article at least, these Chinese people, will go name their kids after Rolex or fucking Gandalf. Like you'll have Ling Ling or Gandalf Ling Ling or whatever. I mean, it's just fucking stupid. So apparently there was a great, market opportunity here. And I think it's a fabulous example of the staggering degree to which the powers that be, our social order, what have you, I think largely K through 12 and by extension the government have done this job of convincing people that it is almost as essential as breathing or food or water to get an education, with an education defined as kindergarten through 12, unsurprisingly sponsored by the state, and then college, which is also sponsored by the state. Do you kind of see connection there? Obviously, that contention is ridiculous. If you look at it, I mean, I personally know one person, I'm assuming there's millions out there, with, 1 or 2 master's degrees that makes $20 an hour. When you get degrees in useless fucking fields like English, the liberal arts, I guess kind of business, but at least you can usually get a decent job for those. Basically anything that's not STEM. The outlook's pretty grim, and what a lot of people do is they get their bachelor's degree in, let's say, women's studies, and then they go, well, I can't get a job. I guess I'd better go get another more advanced degree that costs even more than the first one because that'll make me more hireable, when in fact it really doesn't. If you're into hiring at all, I would highly suggest staying away from men or women with any of these left-leaning degrees, as they're likely to not only be incompetent, they're also probably dumb and fundamentally indoctrinated with this political ideology that destroys everything our country is about. Pretty grim, I know. But I mean, it's getting really sad to the point where you'll find these PhD programs in fundamentally bullshit fields. One that comes to mind is exercise physiology. I mean, that is just... So you're a personal trainer with a PhD? Like, what the fuck, man? I guarantee you there's people out there who literally just went and got the certification for a couple $100 and how many ever months that took, who not only make more money, but have helped way more people accomplish their goals than somebody who spent 8 or 9 years, farting around in academia trying to get this degree just because it's got the PhD moniker in front of it, which I think thanks to this bullshit, eventually people are gonna, kind of realize that, unfortunately, degrees are worthless and more often a liability than not, especially if they're outside of STEM. But it's literally sad because I can count, just in my own experience, a number of these examples where, the son or the daughter is super pressured into going into school and everybody's so proud of what they managed to do because they're the first in the family to get a degree. And the degree's a fucking joke. It's like you didn't go to school to get a PhD in aerospace engineering, a real PhD, or chemical engineering, or what have that. You went for some leftist crap, something that you could have done with a certification, just because it has the letters in front of it. And that's where the real problem lies, is that college, the reason it had so much positive thought behind it was because back in the day, only a certain level of person could get into college, and just the fact that they were able to get in there was basically, okay, well, this person's competent. Now it's basically the exact opposite. There are no standards when you go to college. In fact, it's the opposite, to where, like at our elite universities, for instance, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, etc., they will pass up on a more qualified white person or Asian person to let a less qualified and stupider black or Hispanic person in there in the name of diversity, which is also a bullshit idea. Anytime you hear diversity, just replace it with anti-white racism and the whole scheme will make a lot more sense, because it doesn't really help the black or brown people to get a degree that, what the fuck, they can't even accomplish the program load. That's like going and taking some white person from Appalachia and giving them a spot at Harvard instead of somebody who comes from, like, I don't know, any middle class area in the country. It's fucking retarded, And the real problem is we're seeing this situation where these bullshit degrees, which comes down to the whole women are, outperforming men when it comes to college. It's like, who cares? If you look at the you know, the statistics behind what kind of degrees they pursue, I mean, not only are they not going to have no employment opportunities, they're also indebted, and they wasted 4 or 5 years, let's say, not having a job, or even worse, they wasted those years and now it's like 10 times more fucking difficult, if not impossible, you know, than it would have been to have a family and get married, which is something that I argue the majority of women and men want to do, you know, which, you know, says something about the resiliency of the human condition, that such, you know, inclinations can be maintained in the face of what appears to be like $1 trillion propaganda campaign, you know. And this whole thing with this gal, you know, she found out a way to make 6 figures online, most of which is offset by algorithms, you know, to where you're not really having to do much to maintain it. You created the system and, you know, you're getting paid for that. You found a way to provide value, more value than you could provide getting a fucking, you know, a degree of any sort, arguably, because if you think about it, the money you're paid is kind of a barometer of how much, obviously not all the time, but it's a decent indicator of how much value you're providing to society. So let's assume she goes and gets a STEM degree where she might make $70,000 a year. So in 10 years, at $70,000 a year, that's a gross of $700,000 for an exchange of a staggering amount of time relative to what she's doing with the company here, you know. Whereas in less time, without cockamamie accreditation, she was able to create a company, a system, whatever, that provided, you know, I forgot what, it was like $400,000 worth of value in I think like 6 months or something crazy. So, I mean, this is your signal from the market to tell you, okay, you need to go over here and do this because this is what you're getting paid for, instead of going over here and doing this. That's how like price signaling and getting paid to do stuff works. So, you know, again, it's interesting that instead of continuing in that vein or going and building another company to help people and provide value, you decide to take 3 to 5 years to go get a school and pay some transnational assholes money so they'll give you an accreditation that is becoming increasingly worthless. Like, do you see the disconnect there? You know, and it's all fun and games when it's just coming down to money, but this kind of idea is fucking up people's lives, whole countries, arguably the entirety of Western civilization, and it really needs to stop because it's fucking retarded, you know? And how ironic is it that one of the most independent and strong things you can do is, you know, start your own company and make money independently so that people can't tell you what to do. You're not kind of blackmailable from an economic standpoint, you know. So that is kind of the perfect example of being strong and independent, especially in the vein that these feminist retards go on about. And what does this young gal do? Goes to school. The most mainstream conformist thing you could do, the exact opposite of being strong and independent, because, you know, it's what everybody else does by definition, right? Come on. So, you know, and as a side note, if you read in the article, she was able to start it off because of a loan she got from her dad. I think it was a couple grand or something, but it's funny because, you know, if getting help from your parents was actually bad, you'd think you'd see it applied more consistently, but apparently it's only bad when certain presidents get legs up from their parents. I don't know, you know, extract the principle and reapply to reveal the bullshit behind what's ever going on, you know. So it just makes no fucking sense. And then you go into it a little further, and if you think about and really kind of talk to people about why they're going to school, especially smart people where it makes the least sense, it's like they're not going for the money, they don't give a shit about the accreditation or any of those things fundamentally. It just has to do with going along with the status quo, you know, literally. Because go out and survey your social landscape. How many people give more credibility to somebody who has a bachelor's degree of any sort, you know, when it comes to speaking in general or judging their intelligence or what have you, than somebody who may not have those accreditations but is well-spoken and presents a sound case? Otherwise, obviously, 9 times out of 10, it's a bachelor's degree, and it makes no fucking sense whatsoever. You know, you can look at logic and you can look back for thousands of years, literally. I don't know what the Latin name is for it off the top of my head, but it's the argument from authority. It's fundamentally invalid. I mean, there's definitely a correlation between, you know, somebody who has experience in a field and who doesn't, but that does not by any means present this cut and dry case where somebody who has degrees is somebody who's more apt to be listened to than somebody who doesn't, especially when people pretend to bang on about being independently minded and thinking for yourself, something that if you go to college, I could almost guarantee, you know, is not really the case, just because look at what you're doing. Definitely not acting in a way that indicates self-thought, you know, again, as a general rule of thumb. And let's not forget, like I've said many times, that college is fundamentally a waste of time. And to kind of wrap it up, think of it like in what sane universe would it make sense to take somebody who can clearly create these sort of, you know, brilliant effigies to serving other people in the form of cool companies like naming Asians for America, whatever, you know, would say that, yes, stop doing that and go to school to get a worthless fucking degree just like everybody else. Makes no sense.